going on, Jerome? It's a beautiful Sunday. Birds are chirping and stuff, and it's time for another Vikings news dump. Happy Sunday. He sees you when you're pooping. That's right. So, go Wolves. F the Thunder and F Denver right in the face. Take that. Last day of the Masters. So, actually, 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to go to the Masters, but I declined because I'm just not interested in golf enough. And one of our buddies who's really into golf sent it in my place, life-changing event, that whole stuff. And I wish that I like golf more. I'm just like sort of whatever, right? Anyways, something that I wish that Vikings ownership would have liked more was Jim Harbaugh. Ooh, segue. Even though fully all in with Kevin O'Connell, don't start ish. But who's got it better than us? Nobody. So Harbaugh getting back in the NFL this season with the Los Angeles Superchargers, won a national title at Michigan. But remember, a couple years ago, before the Vikings ultimately hired Kevin O'Connell after firing Mike Zimmer, the Vikings were very much in negotiations with Jim Harbaugh. But Harbaugh flew in thinking it was a coronation when Kwesi definitely saw it as an interview. Same thing with ownership. It didn't work out, is what it is. Now, all the rumor and speculation, was there a single executive, was a single minority owner just like, no? Possibly. I don't know. Like, who went to Ohio State? Actually, yeah, Ohio State alum would want Harbaugh there until recently. Anyways, but it didn't work out. Now there's questions, right? Because jumping Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers are at 5, and that could be a spot where the Vikings do trade up, potentially for Harbaugh's football son, J.J. McCarthy, right? And long story longer, Florio over at Pro Football Talk via Purple Persuasion, Florio, he doesn't expect Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers to do the Vikings any favors with trading up, given they passed on Harbaugh in 2022. Hell no, that's the problem for the Vikings. Now, that does seem to be like, oh, of course, he's going to screw over the Vikings and all that stuff. But Harbaugh's a football dude, all right? And Harbaugh doesn't seem like a guy who holds grudges. I feel like he's positive. I feel like he's enthusiastic. I feel like he's going to get after things, but he's not going to cut off his nose to spite his face, right? I just don't see that. And also, ultimately, the power doesn't rest with him. It rests with the general manager, but whatever. But the whole thing about it is like, hey, if they're at 5 and they see tons of value with trading down with the Vikings, potentially for 11, 23, and some change, and if Harbaugh sees that as a way to improve his team, like, he's not going to just say no because of crap that happened 2 years ago. Harbaugh doesn't strike me as that type of dude who's petty and vindictive like that, especially when it could be at the detriment of his own team. So I just don't see it. But it's funny where all these storylines and narratives intertwining with this draft. Like, you got the crooked Chicago Bears taking Caleb Williams in Detroit. You have J.J. McCarthy potentially going to the Vikings in Detroit and potentially trading up to the draft pick of the guy that they could have hired over Kevin O'Connell back in 2022. It's funny, man. It's funny. Also funny is, speaking of old stuff, so back in the day, Mekhi Blackmon teammates with Caleb Williams, the presumed number 1 overall pick this year. Also in the foreground, the picture with Caleb Williams, future Hall of Fame wide receiver. I don't know who that is. It's blurry. Maybe he's like Bigfoot. That's a problem. Bigfoot is blurry. But Blackmon, who picked off Caleb Williams several thousand times in practice back in the day. But Caleb Williams, wait till y'all see draft day suit and my ladies dress 1 of 1. So Caleb Williams getting ready for the draft in Detroit. Okay. I get moving the draft around because it's kind of fun for the fans, but Detroit just doesn't have that same panache as Radio City Music Hall in Manhattan, or even Vegas was fun. Or when they have it in Green Bay next year for whatever god-awful reason. Anyways, but Blackmon, I want you to know we cool and all right now, but once your name gets called, and if it's not Minnesota, you will be unable to join my PlayStation party. So Williams is cut out of, what do kids play video games nowadays? GoldenEye? I don't know. But again, I love the pettiness of it too. Blackmon. So here's what's going to happen. Vikings and Bears will play week 1, and Blackmon will get a pick 6 off of Caleb Williams and be just like, I feel so bad for my guy, but oh well. Moving on. But it's fun. I mean, guys are still friends on different teams. guys change teams. It's all good. It's all good. It's all hard. But no more PlayStation Group for Caleb Williams. There you go. Speaking of the draft, so Commies have the number 2 overall pick. Presume that the Bears will take Williams at 1, and the draft basically starts with the Commies at 2 because their decision could set up a chain reaction of what the hell is going to happen with the quarterbacks and also how it greatly affects the Minnesota Vikings. So Commanders football, Hogshaven, I believe that they were SB Nation, but podcast at Schefter on. Schefter tells Commanders fans that it's safe to order a Jaden Daniels jersey. Hail to the Commanders. Blah, blah, blah. So the Commies up there at 2, going with Jaden Daniels, with Caleb Williams at 1. That basically is when the draft starts. And Jaden Daniels is box office, right? And I know that some Washington fans are going to be like, oh, this is just like RG3 at number 2 in 2012. I think Jaden Daniels is a much more polished passer than RG3. Still has that dynamic movement skills. I think he'll be fine. And he is box office. Like he is a guy that you will buy a ticket, you will buy the jersey, and you'll do the damn thing. And with Magic Johnson, you need an element of showtime, and Jaden Daniels is indeed that. But how does this affect the Vikings? How does this affect me? All right. So if the Commies go with Daniels at 2. Pro Persuasion, according to Move the Sticks, Daniel Jeremiah, there is some buzz that the Patriots prefer Jaden Daniels over Drake May. If the Commanders take Daniels, the Patriots might be open to trading back. The Giants and the Vikings are 2 teams that are potential candidates. So that, again, chain reaction. So say that the Commies and the Patriots both want Jaden Daniels, right? But the Commies get him because they're at 2, Williams goes 1. And now the Patriots, with their preferred quarterback option off the board, do they settle for Drake May, who they may not be as high on as a team like the Vikings? Because, well, the Vikings... First off, the Vikings can afford to be a little bit higher on a guy like Drake May, and given his variance and given things to work on, because he can afford to sit for a year. Patriots may just have to roll him out there, even though you do have Jabroni Brisket. I mean, the Vikings have Sam Darnold. They have great infrastructure. They don't need the rookie quarterback to start right away. The Patriots kind of do, right? But if their preferred quarterback option of Jaden Daniels, potentially, is off the board, I mean, they could see great value in moving down 11-23 and some change, and the Vikings could move up for Drake May. So that's where it could be a win-win. And like we said, that's how the Commies completely change the face and complexion of this board. Because say that the Commies go with Drake May, and then the Patriots are like, we're not trading out. We want Jaden Daniels. Now, the Vikings could be boxed out because maybe the Vikings try to get up to 4 or 5, but they're leapfrogged by the Giants or the Broncos or the Raiders or whoever, or maybe J.J. McCarthy even takes a draft day tumble and they're able to get him at like 7 or 8. Who knows? All the different friggin' scenarios, but I wouldn't be mad if the Vikings end up with Drake May at 3. Just not at this point. Speaking of the draft, so Pro Persuasion point out that the Vikings hosted Northern Iowa defensive tackle Christian Boyd, physical freak, combine snub, ridiculous. So great run stuffer. Yes, caliber of competition, but certainly can scale up. Also, I think he can be a plus pass rusher. I think that he's Linval Joseph, Henry Thomas adjacent type nose tackle. If the Vikings could get him at 108, at the top of the 4th round, day 3, I would love that. I would love it. Also, interesting name. So, Alabama right tackle J.C. Latham, brought in for a 30 visit. Now, Latham is projected to be a mid-first round guy, and that's interesting because, there's also scuttlebutt like, hey, if the Vikings are able to make a trade, can they still hang on to 23? Because what's up, Sylvie? Say it's a short jump for the Vikings to 7 or 8. Maybe they don't have to include the 2023 first rounder. Maybe they include the 2025 first rounder, which I'd rather include this year's, but that's argument for another day. But say the Vikings do hang on to 23, maybe Latham potentially makes it through the gauntlet of teams looking for offensive line help. You look at the Bengals, you look at the Steelers, you look at the Dolphins, etc. Latham could certainly be an interesting guy, and he would be a departure. So the Vikings, for the last half decade plus, almost decade plus, have gone with the smaller, more athletic, outside zone offensive lineman, but Latham's pure power. Well, Latham is an absolute monster, 6'6", 342 if he's announced. And also, so there's players that carry 342 badly. Latham carries it really well. Like, Latham is jacked up, man. Love to see it. Although he is from Wisconsin, so maybe he's a stupid Badgers and Packers fan, but who knows? Who knows, man? But so Latham, 6'6", 342, long arms, huge hands. He's be rock solid, right? And he's been the Tide starting right tackle for the last 2 years, does have guard experience as well. And it's like we talked about with Talisa Fuaga, where you draft him to be the heir apparent for Brian O'Neill at right tackle. O'Neill still has some good years left in him, but injuries are catching up, as well as that contract is getting sizable. So now pick Latham or Fuaga or whoever, a natural right tackle, keep him at right guard, reduce him inside, but on the right side so he doesn't have to change up his footwork, and then rock him out there, and then eventually he takes over at the tackle spot, and you're good to go. So, I mean, if the Vikings, obviously they're just doing their diligence in the spot, but if the Vikings can find a way, maybe they stick and pick, or maybe they move up from 11. But if they're able to land Latham at some point in the first round, I wouldn't be mad at that, man. We have the meats indeed. Speaking of draft picks, so Javon Baker, low-key, is one of my favorite receivers in this class, man. Just he catches everything, contested catch spots. Like, he's not a burner. He's not really going to run away from you. But as a guy who can get open in a phone booth, a guy who's going to be an absolute asset as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, Javon Baker's that, man. Vikes fan page. Vikings are hosting Central Florida wide receiver Javon Baker on a pre-draft visit per Aaron Wilson. Baker totaled 1139 and 7 touchdowns last season with the Knights, while averaging 21.9 yards per reception. 21.9 yards per catch. So he runs great routes, gets open, great hands as well. Yards after catch is a plus. And so I do think that Baker's probably going to go day 2-ish. Maybe he gets to early day 3. I kind of doubt it. So if the Vikings do maneuver a little bit, they probably would have to land him in the back end of the second or in the third round. But Javon Baker, so Baker with Jefferson and Addison would be the trident, man. They would be the best wide receiver trio in the National Football League, and number 2 would not even be close. And that's not hyperbolic. That's not homerism. That's nothing. That's nothing, man, because Baker is that dog. And speaking of wide receivers, so CeeDee Lamb, same draft class as Justin Jefferson, taken before JJ. He is eligible for a extension. He's set into his 5th-year option season. Michael Gelkin, beat writer for the Cowboys. Cowboys begin their voluntary spring workout program 1 week from today. Barring a surprise departure from precedent, wide receiver CeeDee Lamb won't participate as a potential holdout looms. So think about the Cowboys and Jerry Jones. Jerry Jones is weird because, as much as he hypes up his team, he is a hard negotiator when it comes to extensions. Like, they drag everything out. The player in question is badmouthed through sources, leaked through the media, and eventually, usually the player gets his money. But, I mean, he even did that with Emmitt Smith. Like, Emmitt Smith missed the first 2 games of his season because of a contract dispute. It's crazy, man. But so, how does this relate to the Vikings? So, with Justin friggin' Jefferson, yes, he's going to get his money. Yes, he's going to be paid. Yes, he's going to be the highest paid receiver in NFL history. Probably he's going to get 35, 36, 37 million per year, as well as 100 million plus guaranteed. That's the market. The market is the market, and just pay JJ. And it does seem like Jefferson and the Vikings are in lockstep. It seems like they're going to get something done. There isn't any animosity. There isn't anonymous sources and leaks in that one side's being obtuse. There ain't that. And also Kwesi saying that they were close to an extension last year. But, I mean, I understand from Jefferson's point of view because his agent probably saw that the cap was going to go up precipitously this year. And also it's weird to sign a long-term extension with multiple years left on the deal. It's a deadline-driven league, and I think that Jefferson and the Vikings will get something done before the start of training camp. But why CeeDee Lamb matters is that, so Jefferson, it's not all about the money, but it's a little bit about the money. You know what I mean? And money is about respect. Money is about value. And to a degree, that's the case that Kirk Cousins is making, but also who cares what Kirk thinks. But with Lamb, so basically it's a game of position, like who goes last. It's just like poker, right? So they want to leapfrog each other. So it's Jefferson, it's CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase is eligible for an extension, so is Amon-Ra St. Brown. And whoever goes last is probably going to get the most money, right? In all likelihood. But with Lamb, if he gets paid first, that sets a precedent, that sets a floor for the agent. And so if Lamb, Chase, and Amon-Ra get paid ahead of Jefferson, all of a sudden his agent says, like, okay, we'll take this. We'll just take a little bit more. So there you go. I think that's one of the reasons why this thing is dragging out, and also because, I mean, there's nothing important going on right now. Now, there is voluntary OTAs coming up in a hot second. Jefferson did skip the voluntary part of OTAs last year, did show up for mandatory minicamp. Will he do that again this year without a contract? We'll see. But even if he does, I don't see that as that big of a deal. So JJ will indeed get his. It's just a matter of time. So that's what's annoying. Like, if CeeDee Lamb was on like the Seahawks or like a normal team, this would be done. But of course, since it's Jerry Jones, Jerry Jones, this thing's gonna drag out, and also that affects the timing of Jefferson, because I highly doubt that if Lamb does indeed sign an extension this offseason, that it will be after JJ. I don't see that, because they're probably waiting for JJ to sign too. It's like, but there's no universe where CeeDee Lamb deserves more money than Justin Jefferson. That's it. That's it, man. Anyways, Vikings news dump on this beautiful Sunday. You guys are the best. You know what to do. Skull production value.